I think
The wisdom you will hear today and learn will be overwhelming.
hopefully. Thank you.
Best of several continents.
That's right. Ready to go? Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, all. I'm Rick Kamak, the Executive Director of Industry Relations. Today, my guest has worked not only in Europe, but in America. Born in Austria, went to school in Linz, worked his way through kitchens in Vienna and in in Munich, sorry.
Yeah.
Then made his way over to America, where he worked in kitchens with Charlie Trotter and with Gordon Ramsay, where he earned a 2-star Michelin, right? So welcome, Markus Glocker.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
I should add, he has a 3-star review in the New York Times, a 3-star review from New Yorker magazine, and also got his own Michelin star, I believe, at Batard, correct?
Correct, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your start. You grew up in a hotel family, basically.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk a little bit about how your parents either influenced you or try to dissuade you from being in the hotel or restaurant?
First of all, I think my dad said, "Don't do it." You know, that was the first thing. But yeah, my aunt had they have no kids, so they had a beautiful hotel there. They ran it with all the surroundings of family on a daily basis. And when we were young kids, we on the school holidays, for example, 9, 10 years old, we started working in the kitchen and serving the tourists from Germany and Austria and everywhere. So it was sort of like a very relaxed environment. The food was very simple but still delicious. And so I got into the whole aspect of hotel, restaurant, and kitchens.
When did you have a feeling that this was going to be your destiny, that this is where you were going to ultimately land as a career?
I always liked it, but again, there was this one little thing called taking over a business when you're very young, since they wanted to give me the hotel since they had no kids to follow the footsteps. And I was like 19 years old. So I said, I want to get as far away as possible from this. So I packed my things basically, and I went to Germany and just wanted to explore the real way of doing it, to learn the cooking and the kitchen and the more the high-end way of the hospitality business. Which was
more restaurants than hotel, though.
Yeah, it was more restaurants in hotels, but they were ran separately as well. So I went to the military service. It's something you have to do in Austria, which was, in my opinion, not the wisest time to use. I was already hold it back. I wanted to go back into the kitchens and wanted to learn something. So I did this, and then I went to Munich. Was my first step in a professional kitchen, which was it's translated to Four Seasons, but it's not the same group. It's the Kempinski Hotel Group, which was at that time a very high-end hotel group. And they had one beautiful restaurant in there, which was called the Walter Spiel restaurant, which was one of the glorious hoteliers back in the time in the 20s and 30s. And that's where the first time when I walked in there, and I knew this smells good here. This smells like something I never experienced in a kitchen, meaning the apprenticeship in school I did. There's certain smells in the kitchen, certain ingredients in the kitchen, which is one thing. But then when you're going to go into a kitchen where everything is cooked on a daily fresh basis, the bread, the gougères, the smell of blanching lobster in the morning to everything. So I knew I really enjoyed that part of it. And then I was interested to learn more. And since then, I never left this kitchen business.
So did you know then that this was your destiny?
Yes. And obviously you have to be always lucky as well with people you work with. And I had really chefs, they were maybe hard in certain ways, but in the same time, very mentor-like and teachers, as well as, straighten you up, straighten you out. So that was a good combination of all the chefs I work with.
Typically, it's a hard go.
It's a hard go for sure.
What kept you going?
I didn't want to go home.
That's good.
I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to, go back and say, let's figure this out at home and be in the secure surroundings of home. That was never an option for me. So I really wanted to do as good as possible with one restaurant. And, you know, I always say this, I probably wrote a resume in my life, probably twice. And that was like for visa purposes to come to America, or that was actually it, I believe. And the first time I did my apprenticeship, I had to obviously write one. But everything else was like, you hand it off from the chef to the next chef, and they have obviously the personal contacts, and you're sort of in the circle of trust. And this is another very good exercise in general, because you do not want to embarrass your chef you worked formerly for. So there's a sort of an ownership as well, that you're going to follow through when he sends you to the next kitchen to learn more and succeed. So always that drive was there. And, you know, I did my stints were a little bit shorter to begin with. That was more like 1 year, 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. And as further you came up in the ranks, then, you know, the time was longer. It was not like 2 or 3 months. It was like, I ran Petard for 7 years. You know, I was at Gordon Ramsay at London for 7 years.
Right. Typical culinary resume, right? You work your way through things, feel out different areas. Yeah,
exactly. So that was sort of the journey. And after Munich, you know, the sky was the limit. I knew this is my profession. It's what I want to do. And I want to do it the right way. So I did my trip to London. So I flew over there and I knocked on Gordon Ramsay's door back in the time on the delivery entrance. No resume. And a gentleman called Josh Emmett, that was a New Zealand chef at that time. He opened up and, you know, we talked. He sent me back, had to fly back again for a stage. I remember that. And I cooked for 1 day, and then, you know, I started.
Talk about some of the highlights of working in some of the better European kitchens.
You know, I was saying what I loved about the US was like, I could be much more creative. 1,000%. Like, you had a little bit more freedom. I guess the word freedom is it's a big thing in the US. So that exactly is what happened there, because all the recipes were dialed in stone in Europe. You were on the fish station, you were on the meat station, you were on the past. This was the recipe, follow through, make sure it's the same every day, and perfect, which was called consistency for the Michelin-star restaurants. But when I went to Charlie Trotter's the first time to experience, like I always said, it's a box from the Skijing market coming in with 3 fish in there for $4,000. Still a miracle to this day. And then Charlie said, you know, butcher this fish. I never butchered the fish in that carrot. To allow the person to make a mistake in an ingredients like this is huge. And obviously I had somebody next to me too, which was Matthias Murges. I'm sure you know him. Was the chef de cuisine at that time, and he walked me through the training part of it. But this was immediately for me where I like the management style in the US much better than what I experienced in Europe, because you have a little bit more to say, to put your feelers into the dish, and you learn much quicker by making mistakes, but you know, the mistakes don't go necessarily into the dining room.
So what do you think that you took away from Europe that helped you with your success in America? Kind of conversely to what the benefit of being in America was.
And both benefited.
Regiment, maybe?
Yeah, I think discipline is definitely something I always enjoyed. I mean, my father was a musician. Every kid at home had to learn an instrument. So that came from piano to trumpet, classically trained. So my father was quite ruthless in that perspective to make sure we're going to follow through there. So we had to obviously exercise piano and trumpet on a daily basis. And when I came to more regimented kitchens, it was fairly easy for me to find my place, you know. And, you know, even if it was a hard service, for example, you're going to be thrown off the first couple of times when somebody gets a little bit more aggressive towards you. And I'm not saying shouting, but, you know, more direct as your boss. But then you figure it out to actually pull through this. And it's not about you. It's about the product you executing, and the quality wants to be, you know, the same every day. So I had a fairly easy go on that. Yeah. And that benefited me definitely here in the US.
Right. So I know you work with Gordon Ramsay here. You work with Charlie Trotter. You mentioned, did you work with any other chefs when you got to America? And I'll segue that with, did you feel ready to come here when you did?
No.
Okay.
I had all my belongings here, 2006 when I came here, and there was a place opening up, which was Gordon Ramsay at the London, the first restaurant of Gordon Ramsay to be opened in the US, which was quite frankly not the biggest success in terms of press and receiving this. I mean, this is not a secret, but I would say it was the biggest learning experience of my life to deal with an operation. I was 26 years at the time. I got hired as a sous chef within 2 years when the place got sold off. I was the executive chef of a 2-Michelin-star restaurant, casual restaurant, 670 rooms plus banquets.
Wow.
So luckily I had a company called Blackstone behind this, and they were actually sitting me down and walking me through a P&L, which was the first time I saw them.
Yeah.
So I still give them a lot of credit for that they actually took the time. Obviously, it's benefited them as well, but that somebody really takes the time that, you know, you have the talent, but you don't have this. And that somebody actually takes the time to teach you that, you know, okay, this is the percentage for food cost. This is the percentage for labor cost. I know you have 2 Michelin stars, but you still have to operate. I don't have to tell you this, but you know, this is something was definitely new for me. And I'm very thankful still to this day that they did it, because otherwise I would not be in this place right now.
Culinary management students take note.
It's a must. It's a must these days. And quite frankly, you know, I always say this now as well. Carte blanche. Everybody knows carte blanche now in a restaurant when a chef wants to have the perfect investor to create this magical restaurant. It is great, but in the same time, for me nowadays, it's if the place is not successful financially in a way as well. I'm not talking about huge profits, but being successful. That's for me the biggest reward in a lot of ways. You know, you have to figure out not just using the best of the best. You work with ingredients from here to here, and you're going to combine them, and you make something delicious and what people really enjoy.
I always say that the challenge in my business is people come up in silos. You know, you're either you're back of the house, you're front of the house, and sometimes neither the twain shall meet. And there's this thing called operations that overlies it all. So is it a challenge for you to learn like the P&L side of things? And
oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, we had 84 cooks. I remember this today. Had 84 cooks on the schedule. Union, local 6. Never deal with it in my life. I was 26. Then I was 28 years old. I wanted to. You know, I wanted to keep the 2 stars. I wanted the 3rd star, basically. And so I worked. It's just not the story I want to tell, because it's hard work. But we worked 18 hours a day. I did this probably 6 to 7 days a week, because I thought myself, if you're not in the restaurant, you know, and if something happens, the Michelin star is gone. So that was for me the biggest thing. But in the same time, it burned me out in a very young age as well, that you work those kind of hours and that kind of responsibilities. And luckily, you know, the finance people told me, you know, what to do and how to do it, and, you know, to get in the line of the line items on the P&L, what we have to do while still preserving the quality of food and quality of service. And that's the game.
Yeah. Well, perfect segue to my next question. So, and you touched on it, but so tell me, what was it like to be an executive chef for the first time, and how did it differ from what you were doing to date? And did you feel you were up to that?
I had no idea. Number one, I had a lot of passion. I had a lot of
26 years
knowledge about cooking, but you know, you're at that age, you think you know it all, and I wasn't different, and I had to learn a lot of things the hard way, because you just want to go with your head through the wall. But you know, end of the day, I think everybody has to go for this. Otherwise, you have to make those mistakes to grow. But it definitely was out of my league. But still, you know, we kept the stars as long as I was there. I had an amazing pastry chef there, which was Ron Babrocki. I'm sure you know him. He's now at Gotham Bar and Grill, the chef. Ron got trained in Germany back at the time as a conditor, and so the flavors I wanted to have coming from him was like sort of, it really clicked. So the food we did was always, in my opinion, a very high-end product. But again, it's not just all about the food being perfect. In New York, it's a little bit more than that. And it has to be the whole package of like the way you open, the way you organize, the way you set up the place, and obviously the way you go through each month of the year. And this was something I think nobody was ready for.
Yeah. So you touched on something else. So let's talk a little bit about Michelin stars. Obviously super important in Europe, and that's where it emanated from. And now, you know, of course, over the years, it's become more and more important, like maybe every year in the US. Talk about how important it is to have a Michelin star here versus there.
Tricky question.
Yeah. Political maybe as well.
It's for sure, it's political, but, you know, I think it's still one of the most validated guides in the world for a chef to go through and to be honored with a Michelin star 2 or 3. I do think that after going for this, and I think everybody should go for this as well, to see the level of discipline, the level accuracy and consistency. And I'm not saying consistency in a boring way. I'm saying consistency in a way of like, how you set up your station. I'm not talking about the menu itself. How you setting up your station? How you doing certain setups that every day when you have a new person coming in the kitchen, does this person find its way in that kitchen because you have it set up consistently? So you're going to go on a fish station, a meat station, that. So that was sort of the level of training with the Michelin star restaurants. But at the same time, the idea with Koloman, for example, was not to be a Michelin star restaurant. It was not for me to be the chef who wants to put too many ingredients on the plate and wants to showcase the technique on the plate and show everybody how great I am or not great I am. For me, it was more about the guest again, and the guest is the person who eats the food, and do they like it? And I didn't want to necessarily cook for all the chefs either. I mean, the chefs coming in, they want to check something out, and I guarantee there will be a couple of your own colleagues who will not understand it because you think you probably didn't push hard enough to put everything on the plate you could, or like all the ingredients. You want to. It's very hard to cook for the guest or for the chef or the hospitality person. But for me, I really didn't care about this. I felt like less is more in that perspective, less ingredients, use great ingredients and go for this. But I still think once you do this, Michelin changes as well. And consistency comes, if it has two elements on the plate, it's harder to cook them because you cannot mess these two elements up and they have to be perfect. And if they are perfect, I guarantee you're going to get a star, in my opinion.
Well, I can vouch for the fact that his restaurant's fantastic. Dine there. I've been there many times.
Nothing is perfect, by the way. Yeah, we're still working on that.
It's technically perfect and tastes delicious. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about segueing into the chef owner position. I know you've done it prior, but what was that like, and what was the learning curve there?
That's another, completely another learning curve. Now you have the step of like knowing how to read a P&L.
Exactly. And now you have no practice, right?
Yes. So now the next level of involvement is obviously the ownership, and I think the ownership is something I thrive for because I think any restaurant I worked for, I always had a feeling of ownership without actually having ownership. I think that's the way you have to participate. If I'm going to work a fish station at Gordon Ramsay and then there's a bad review, I take this as personal as Gordon would have done at that time, because it was reflecting me as well, because people knew I'm working in this kitchen. So the ownership was always a very important thing for me. Opening a restaurant in New York City and owning a restaurant in New York City, I think it's a whole different ballgame, and I think it's a huge investment, a huge risk in a lot of ways as well. Again, you need a team to work with, in my opinion. The chef alone doesn't cut it most of the times. So I left Gordon Ramsay at that time. I had my business plan ready. I circulated the business plan, and was a gentleman called Drew Nieporent, I'm sure you're familiar with. We got in touch with him, and I had this concept ready. I had the people I wanted to put in place there as well. Everything was ready, even the financial statement, what we're going to do, revenue, how many covers, everything. And I just needed that space. And I think Courton or Montrachet was the restaurant called back in the time, was the right fit. Drew is he's in the industry for a long time. He knows a lot of people. He's savvy in running restaurants. So we partnered up with him. We did our deal to be partners. And that was the first time I was a partner in a restaurant here. And we had a great time, 7-year run. We won Best New Restaurant, James Beard, and all those accolades, which is great. But first and foremost, people enjoyed the food and experience on a daily basis. And it was a 75-seat restaurant. And, the heydays, we did $4.5 million revenue in a restaurant which has 70 seats, dinner only. And at that time, we were open 5 days a week. You do the math. It's quite impressive to do that with that kind of food. So we did like 200 covers on a nightly basis in the first year to do that. So that was quite an impact coming from Gordon Ramsay in a small restaurant where you do 40, 50 people and you have 85 cooks in the kitchen. Obviously, there's other elements to it, but this was like 8 cooks and everybody was super focused, and it was a total different experience.
That's, I guess, one of the differences between like 1-star versus like a 2 to 3 is the ratio of who's in your kitchen versus and who's in the dining room relative to who's who's working the dining room relative to who's dining.
Absolutely
changes dramatically, right?
I mean, the first time I walked into the kitchen at Gordon Ramsay when we opened in New York, it was funny. we had superstars on every station.
Yeah.
I knew all these people from
They all
London,
affect
like
the party.
they worked at Lucas, this guy worked at Charlie Trotter, and came from Paris, and I probably had on each station when I looked at this kitchen a rock star. But you know what? They could not get one dish together, which was the way you wanted it, because everybody had to do their own twist and their own thing, and they wanted to change the dishes. So yeah, too many cooks.
Too many cooks in the kitchen. That's it.
That was the end result. But you know,
Yeah.
again, it teaches you another lesson of team building.
Right, sure. Okay, so as a chef owner, how does it change your day-to-day in the way that you look at your restaurant?
For me now, you know, I'm not pretending to be the guy on the line every day on the meat station to cook 50 steaks. I'm not that person anymore. I was for a long time. I was running the pass for a long time. I'm still doing this maybe once or twice a week. But now it's for me, I want to be the mentor. I want to be the person who is creatively involved in the process and tells people, you know, this is a recipe I have from back in the time. I think this would be great in combination with this, and elevates their creative part as well. But you know, just running the business as well. Like you know what's going on, but you're not putting yourself micromanaging in every little thing. So for me, the end result is I see everything in the way when I run the pass at the end of the night. I know already when they messed up in the morning an item in the mise en place, it shows on the plate right away. If there's something wrong, I address it. I will talk to them. We have a Slack channel. We have a WhatsApp channel where all my management is on there. So everybody knows as well. So I don't have to repeat myself 20 times. But that's a very good way of doing this now, and put the right people in the right places. Do not promote too early. Do not put people in the wrong stations where they not belong. Those kind of things is super, super important. It sounds easy, I know, but it's super important. And, you know, motivate them.
Not easy at all.
And it's not easy at all. And really, you know, how are you going to manage now? You cannot just be the guy who is loud and like, you know, really dismantling anybody in the kitchen because they're making a mistake. This is not the time to do this anymore. But still, immediate reaction to mistakes is very important too. It's a fast-paced environment, you know. If the steak is salty, you cannot just start going to HR and write a letter and say, the meat is salty, you know. It has to be an immediate reaction, meaning the next 5 tables going to get salty meat as well. So how are you going to give this message to the person who is cooking the meat, you know? Are you going to be wise and relay the message correctly so that you're not going to interrupt the service so everybody has a great experience? Or you're going to be the person who is old school and dismantles the person and the whole restaurant is going down, and you have probably a whole seating complaining on Yelp and etc. So those kind of, that's now the way of managing a kitchen, and my ownership is very much a part of that. And you know, I have Sophie here; she's helping me a lot with all over with marketing and everything. So she,
An ICE student.
yeah, exactly.
ICE alumni.
Thanks for bringing her along. So those kind of things, it's like, you know, I'm super involved in, like, you know, I love the branding element, I love the design element, I love to see the bigger picture. And when this all comes together with the food, the design and service, there's not many things that are greater than that.
So you talked about operations, you talked about marketing, you talked about being a chef, being at the pass, work-life balance. Talk about it. Is there any? I mean, that's a big thing in today's world.
It is.
And how do you deal with that with your workers? Or do you not?
No, I mean, listen, when we first started this restaurant, all my sous chefs worked with prior, from the chef de cuisine to my sous chefs and pastry chefs. I was very wisely the team members I picked. And my rule was at that time, you know, I do not want to run a restaurant where management works like 16 hours a day and they come in tired every day, and after a couple of months, they're going to go anyway because they can't.
Yeah, the burnout back.
It's just not the right time to do this anymore. But let's be wise and have a schedule together where we say, okay, let's make it 9 or 10 hours as a management leader, and use this time wisely and really have a plan on a daily basis where you have the same way as you have your prep list as a line cook. Not many kitchens or hotels do sometimes have the same for the management. Sometimes, you know, it's just the manager's here, but you know, what are we managing? So to have this in place as well on a daily basis makes it much better.
So how do you spend your free time?
My free time is I go fishing on Mondays. to the
Okay.
Catskills. That's something I always love doing. That's my balance
You
for
cook
sure.
what you catch?
It's catch and release. So yeah, it's beautiful up there. So in the pandemic, my father was a big fisherman, so I never really fished. I was so many years here in New York City. I probably went one time to the Hamptons, and I was like never outside of New York. I was always working.
Sure.
So that was the first time I explored New York State, and it was mind-blowing to come back to the kitchen and you're going to be sort of relaxed, and then you have new energy. So that was very important to me. And I play music. I play piano still on a weekly basis at home just for fun. But that's something which is a little balance for me. But overall, I'm not doing 100 hours a week. No, I'm doing, I'm gonna be every day in the restaurant, but in a wise way, timely as well. That's the key.
As you know, opening a new restaurant's an unbelievable task.
That was different.
Yes. So yeah, talk a little about that. And when do you know it's going to be successful, or do you?
I think you never know. I think that's, you get everybody says the first review sets the tone when you get a review. And if that review is bad, maybe people are going to piggyback on it.
I think there's truth to that.
There's truth to that for sure. But, that's
conversely, I think it does help.
Yeah, for sure. But when it's a success, what's the success? Is the success in the New York Times and Grub Street and Eater, or is the success on your bottom line?
Well, maybe it's how you define it. So how would you define success?
I mean, I can.
Tough question.
I speak on that behalf. I think with our team at Koloman as well. We want to build a brand.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we want to drastically just go all for the profit. We want to reinvest the money to have beautiful branding, have items, development or R&D for the team. I have a team dinner with my sous chefs every 2 months. We went to Cold Restaurant the other night. It was not cheap, but it's important to do that part as well. And I think it's reinvesting that.
Team.
The team is everything then. So the success is don't take it for granted. You get shot out of a gun like in the beginning, and it's summer in New York City for now. We are not the same way as we in the first 2 weeks when we opened. But now the exercise is about, again, management and about teaching the people how to cook, what waste management, everything comes into fruition about those kinds of months where it's slower. Overall, it is a success. I'm very happy about Koloman, but I always treat it on a daily basis that don't take it for granted.
I think that's wise. Good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about partnerships, pros and cons.
Pros and cons?
Mm-hmm.
Tough question. Partnerships, I always think chefs in my category always need a partner in terms of, you have one part covered, which is the passion, the talent, the cooking, maybe in the management, but then there's so many things you don't know. And for me, it was very beneficial to have partners in my career, especially in New York, because it's just a different market. It's a tough market. And with every partner comes more knowledge, and with every partnership you grow. And hopefully I can do it in some point in my life, my own hospitality company, where I'm able to create concepts and restaurant experiences coming out of my own company. But to get to that point is not just taking the money and getting the money. I think it's fairly an easier way to get to the point, but to executing it, to setting it up and know what you're doing and have the team to follow you, that's the real exercise. And that takes years, I think, You
mentioned before, I want to go back to it, but you had mentioned something about creating a brand. So was your plan before you even started that you wanted this to be something bigger than the one entity that exists today?
Yes. So Koloman, obviously the name of the artist. I had this business plan in my pocket for years, and I wanted to have something which was, I don't know, you remember the restaurant Danube?
Sure. Which
was one of the first restaurants. I think they set the tone for a French and a Paris and Viennese cuisine, which was, what is it? I mean, nobody really knows. But end of the day, the food in Vienna is delicious, but it's just not sexy enough. It's just doesn't look that good on the plate as a beautiful French dish in Paris, the surroundings are very different. It's a little bit more old school, while Paris is always sort of on the trigger without being too modern or too old school. So to putting these two things together in combination with the high-end products, the bakery, the wine, the natural wine, what's coming out of Austria, what's coming out of France, those elements, to package them in a way that it's really attractive, because the flavors are so good, but people are not writing certain things on the menu with Austrian dishes because people just turn away. It's too heavy. I don't want to eat this. Right on Nobu sushi, they're gonna come, because it's light. They know what the deal is. But if you're gonna write on a marinated brook trout with horseradish, it's a different flair. So how can you take this and package it? But when you eat it, you're gonna be surprised because it's absolutely delicious and it's actually light. So that was the exercise with Koloman. So Koloman has definitely other brands in it, the Cafe Colo and the Colo Bar and that kind of thing, which we're thriving for in the future. And I think that's going to be very exciting.
Okay, another thing that you had mentioned was how tough it is to open New York. I have to believe it's probably close to the toughest city in the world, if not the toughest city. So talk a little bit about the daily challenges that you face, maybe if anything's unique to New York, then unique New York.
I mean, specifically to the opening, I would say, yes, you're absolutely right, Rick. It's a grueling thing to open a restaurant in New York City. I would say there's a certain amount of openings everybody has in it. I don't know what my number will be, but if you really do it yourself, like on a daily basis, and then you have obviously other lease obligations. There's certain things in the country you have to fulfill as an opening.
Permits
and everything. So the cooking is one thing, but then the food critics coming in, and then this doesn't work and this doesn't work. So if you're not there 24/7, at least in, I would say, the first 3 to 4 months of the business is opening, then you have a very high risk of failing. And I always say this, everything else has to be set up, but as a chef, to open the kitchen and serving food on a daily basis, if you're not there every day when the service hits, the risk that it's going to be a failure is very big. And not necessarily because the food might not be good. It's like you're just simply not in the kitchen, and food critics coming in. I have an open kitchen, for example, not a benefit because I'm a long time here in New York City, and I know a lot of influential writers, and automatically that. So I spotted them right away when they came in, which was a great exercise to have. I have Katja Scharnagel from Le Bernardin, many years. She knows well all the writers, So our teamwork that we were there every day was a big part of the success of Koloman. Right. If we would have been there, and then individually knowing what people like as well in the beginning phase of opening a restaurant. I always loved the episode with Drew when we opened Batard. Gail Green was coming in at that time, and she's obviously one of the biggest food writers in New York City, and Drew knew exactly what she likes and what she doesn't like. I did not know that. So we had one dish on there, which was like a tomato crusted turbot with beautiful tomatoes, and then it was a white tomato sauce. And I always foamed the tomato sauce. It was like a light, airy sauce. And Drew knew exactly she doesn't like foams. She doesn't like that kind of thing. So he immediately came in, said like, please do not foam the sauce, just leave it straight. And the write-up exactly was like, I love that the sauce was.
That's perfect.
And that's certain things. Yeah. That's where partners are really good, and they're going to help you for those kind of things. It's quite interesting. They could have been a horrible review as well, Yeah.
We used to have a picture of every single food critic in the
I do
city.
that too, by the way.
And a couple of notes underneath. Look out for the hat, or whatever. So one of the things that I find is a huge challenge is I really believe you're only as good as your last meal, and you kind of spoke about that in terms of like always being there and being present, because the first time you send that salmon en croûte to a table and it's not executed perfectly, that's a person that could have come 10 times and now not coming the 11th time, because now that's what they have in their head. So I always thought that was one of the biggest challenges that we deal with day in and day out.
I mean, it's the same for me. Right. It's the same for me. Now in the age of like Instagram and TikTok and all these channels, so I have this dish, salmon en croûte, for example, and I have that's the bread we fly in from Italy. I think I'm the biggest.
It's really it's got to be perfect.
It's got to be perfect, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, I have 3 portions coming out of one of those put together dishes, and There's two really nice ones. They have 2 logs, and there's one part where it's 3 logs. Okay, so every dish which is on Instagram has the 2 beautiful logs of the dish. And when I send out the third, which is 3 logs, I mean, I cannot just throw this away. It's just a different shape. It's the same ingredient, same flavor, same seasoning. But you know how many messages I get about this? It's not the same dish. It looks different and this and this and
Crazy.
But this is now the age we're in, and you know, certain things, the signature dishes, they have to be on point, the same. Otherwise, people will not return.
Sure. It's probably the most Instagrammed dish in Instagram at the moment, and for many months prior. So talk a little bit about your management style. You've touched on it, but
management style now is
front of the house,
very
back of the house.
front of the house. I mean, I did front of the house in my apprenticeship. The way it works in Austria is you have 4 years, which is a dual apprenticeship. You have 2 years for front of house. You have 2 years for the kitchen. And while you go to school, you have basically 2 months school. And the rest of the year, you're working in an establishment, restaurant, hotel, full time. There's no, you're a regular person in that. That's sort of the system, how it works. Then you're going to graduate and then you can fly free. The management style of that, I mean, management style did not get teached at that time. Let's put it this way. It was like, you know how to cook and you know how to figure things out and hope your parents raised you well to know certain things.
There's a course you can take, by the way.
Huh? Yeah, I will. So my management style was not existing for quite a while. The first time I read it, I was definitely sort of a little bit on the tougher side because I didn't know how to maneuver myself around to get the results I needed to bring to the table as well. It was not just because of my standards, but when a gentleman called Gordon Ramsay stands next to you or Charlie Trotter and one of your cooks puts a dish up and he tastes it and it's wrong, who's he going to talk to? It's going to be me. So I didn't want to risk that either. So there was definitely some different pressure involved. But again, now for me, I rather have everything in the legwork done, meaning mise en place in the morning when you come in. When you check this as a chef, the mise en place, the way you prepare yourself for the dinner service or for the lunch service is overseen properly by somebody who knows what he's doing and can stop certain things from happening. And then obviously, before you start service, I know it sounds, again, consistency and boring, but it's like, have your management person going for the fridges and see this, the meat station is set up, is the foie gras sliced the same way, is the fish portion the same way, is there any bones in the fish, you know, those kind of things. And that person who does that on a daily basis, sous chef or chef de cuisine, he's the person who's responsible for that. And once you do that, and I start service, if there's something wrong, I'm not annihilating a meat cook or a fish cook. I actually go to my sous chef and say, like, could you check this? And that's the way to manage, and that's breaking this down. It's like it has to follow the management tree, and he's not going to do it again. But this way, I'm not losing my cool or anything in the middle of service. That's shouldn't happen anymore. Especially it's an open kitchen as well, and there's no need for it. If you manage correctly and you follow the steps, there's a lot of mistakes you can avoid during service.
You guys do a lineup for every service?
A lineup every service, absolutely. I mean, we have all these tools from Resi to Open Table to anything. Everybody's Googling everybody these days. And then you have obviously the knowledge of people coming in, dislikes, what they like, allergies, all that. And one of my cooks, one of my sous chefs or myself is always a part of the meeting. And then we translate this meeting as well to our cooks, you know, this is a VIP, let's put this to the side. You know, there's a tester coming in. I always cook, for example, 2 orders for, if I know there's a food critic coming in, I have automatically on each dish I have on the menu, 2 portions I put aside. I will check this personally. I will look through it. Is this correct? So in case they're ordering this dish, I cook 2, just in case something happens. And then I know I have the ability to give the best product possible. And when you do this, you know, you sort of are able to relax the team as well. I mean, when mission or anybody is in and you don't even know that, but it might be, you know, it's a single diner, you know, to really get stressed out and stress your team out, most likely it's going to go wrong. So you have to have a cool, be a little bit more genuine with your team and motivate them to make sure it happens.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go down a different path now. Let's talk a little bit about industry trends. I guess we're coming out of, we're not done with COVID. We're coming out of COVID. What do you think has happened since COVID hit to now, and what direction do you think that the industry is going in?
My personal view is I think people want to be together again in a way of like chatting, having fun, having great food and great wine. And that dynamic of that changed a little bit in the surroundings. I know there's everybody saying, fine dining is dead and like everybody wants to have casual, which is not true in my opinion. There's always a place for fine dining. There's always the talent who knows how to do fine dining as well. It's not just because you do 10 dishes step by step that you know how to cook a fine dining degustation menu. That's not the case.
Do you think fine dining has changed a little bit though?
I think that changed a little bit for sure. But you don't have to change the food in necessarily that drastic. I think what you have to change is how the guest perceives that food and that wine and that service. And the times of the counter, I think it's still there. But this is the last 10 years. Is like the way you get 3 Michelin stars was that kind of setup. You're doing a counter, 22 people, 2 seatings, same dishes for everybody, and then the recipe. Now, I think for me, I love to have an a la carte restaurant. A la carte restaurant is for the people. That's my opinion. You can come to Koloman, for example. You can have 1 dish and go and have a glass of wine. Or...
I can't.
Yeah, that's very positive, by the way. Or you have 4 dishes and you want to have a nice bottle of wine, and you can spend money as well. But that you can spend money, but you don't have to, is something which I think people enjoy now. And when you go to a fine dining restaurant, it's a commitment. You know what you're going to pay for the food beforehand. Then you're going to pick your wine and sort of the bill. This is not just an easy access. You have to really go there for a specific reason. To Koloman, you have great food. Talk to your friends. It's not about me. It's about you guys having fun. And that's, I think, the trend right now for restaurants, in my opinion.
So I know in Pete Wells's article about you guys, he had mentioned that you're doing things that you think are just going to excite people, that's going to get them interested without necessarily worrying about the technical aspects of things. Basically, pleasing them is ultimately the goal. Do you believe do you think that he echoed very well what you're setting out to do?
Yes.
Or you set out to do?
I think I was very happy that he actually captured the thinking behind Koloman. I really thought that was clever, the writing. But at the same time, for me, was always, even with Batard, there's some certain dishes you need to have in the repertoire to catch people's attention. Right. It's like when you have a tasting menu, for example, you're going to go anywhere and the first bite is boring. What do you think is going to come after? Everybody says like, a sequence of motions in terms of a tasting menu should go this way. But my opinion is like the first bite you have needs to be so good and it goes like this, and then it sets the tone for what's to come. And I think that's when you open a restaurant as well, like the first time you're going to be on any publication with any photos, it has to be visual as well. You cannot just say it tastes good, it has to be visual. And for example, when I opened Batard, I had a dish called octopus pastrami. Sounds nuts, I know, but it was a beautiful technique I learned in Munich, and we did pastrami spiced octopus with the flavors of sort of the pastrami you get at Castelli.
Sounds great to me.
And it was like smoky. It was a terrain. It was like mustard on there. It was delicious. Most photographed item at Koloman. The only problem I had, the food cost on that was like 42% or something. Yeah. Could have been great too if I would have sold other dishes as well, but I didn't. Right. Everybody came here for this one dish. Yeah. But that's sort of I think when you design a menu, you need like 2 or 3 dishes. They're like this.
Signatures.
Yeah.
What do you see in New York, I'll say specifically, that it excites you today in the food world, whether it be a chef or a restaurant, besides Koloman?
I mean, there's so much talent in the city. It's unreal. It's still the greatest city in the world for food, in my opinion. In all cultures as well. I mean, you can go anywhere on a daily basis and nightly basis and have the most incredible.
Any up and comers you can think of that stand out to you?
Up and comers. I mean, Kochi, the guys from Kochi. I think they are doing something really incredible. Mm-hmm. I think he used to work with me. Sang used to work with me at Gordon Ramsay. Actually, at that time, he was one of the interns coming from Korea at that time, and he went through the ranks. Per se and Danielle and Danny Home, And now he does his own way and his own signature and his own fingerprint as well, which is something as well you don't see much anymore, that some chefs have their own signature on the plate. It's not a copy. It's not somebody else cooking a dish. It's your own vision of a dish. And when you look at this dish, it's Markus Glocker or Kim or it's Danny Home, that you achieve that. He's a very talented guy in that perspective. I mean, I love Cote. I love Sam and Kim's restaurants because they're real and they're real fun too. And super amazing ingredients, and it's business as well as delicious food at the same time.
Sure.
Incredible. Who else? I mean, Francie in Brooklyn done a great job. John Winterman was one of my former partners as well. I think they're doing a fantastic job.
He was at Batard, right?
He was at Batard. He was my front man at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's incredible places, and there's so many new people I don't even know, which I have to explore. But I make it a point to at least have one dinner a week somewhere new, to see what's up.
Great. Do you think that New York is a good place to open a restaurant today? And why?
I think it's always a good place to open a restaurant. It depends what you're looking for and how you want to place yourself in the market. I think that's the right thing to say. Open a restaurant in Detroit or Chicago might be slightly more relaxed than New York. I get it, but don't we all want to open a restaurant in New York? Isn't that the goal? Isn't that the?
It is.
I used to work in Chicago, came to New York. I knew this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I'm still trying to follow through. And I'm not finished yet. I'm still in my development phase, and that's what you're going to go for. But New York is New York. That's it.
Last two questions. Let me ask it a different way. What would, if you could do anything over, would you do it over? And if so, what?
One thing I would do over, I would maybe put the trigger earlier on opening a restaurant again. I do think that it's honorable to say, you're never ready. You always have to learn, and you're always in that turmoil of working for these incredible chefs. And in the same time, yes, they're incredible because you're working for them, and you're working for them on a daily basis. And there's a time where you need to find out, okay, is it beneficial now, or should I do my own thing, or should I move on? And the chefs have to be honest as well, to let these talented chefs go and develop themselves.
Yeah.
Not many people do that. There's a few, like Daniel Belud. I would say he's one of them. He always is a supporter of mentorship and really brings people up, same as Thomas Keller. But there's a lot of chefs as well. They're immature. They don't want to let you go. They want to keep you in the circle. So jumping in the cold water, you make mistakes. You definitely will have some rough times, but overall you learn with this, and I think it gets you ahead.
Okay, given that you have a room full of culinary entrepreneurs, culinary entrepreneurs, culinary arts students, what would be the best advice to leave them with?
The best advice. Look, I'm still romanticizing this business the same way as I did in my early 20s. I think it's I wouldn't do anything else. Number one, I know how hard it is. I know what's in front of you as well. It's not going to be all lollipops and ice cream. It's going to be very hard, but it is very rewarding, and it is rewarding on two levels. I mean, when you do a good job, it's the emotional rewards you get from this business to make somebody happy in a hotel, restaurant, whatever the establishment is, as well as financially. If you're good, you're good. You can make a lot of money in this business if you follow the right steps. But it's, again, on a daily basis, you have to be on your toes.
You kind of have to love it too, right?
You have to
gotta
love
have
it.
a
There's
passion.
But I do think it's still one of the greatest businesses in my opinion in the world, to create something out of thin air, to make something a la minute for a person who walks in and has an anniversary with their loved ones, and you're going to blow them away with a beautiful dish, or like have that aspect of knowing who this person is, and just all these elements together. I think if you love that part of the business, I think you're in the right field. And to develop that sense of hospitality, there is money to be made. Look at Rick.
For what reason? Okay, so that ends that portion of the discussion. Does anyone have any questions? Comments? Yes.
How would you inspire a cook that doesn't want to be inspired? Like, such as like
Good luck.
I mean, it's you know, there's two ways. You cut your losses. Number one, gonna be quite frankly with you.
That would be my recommendation.
That's one thing. Or you're not, and you're gonna work with this person. But look, if you're gonna run a kitchen, please be involved in the hiring process. Please be present when people show up. Please do not let them people wait for 20 minutes before you're gonna start talking to them. When you talk to a potential cooks, line cooks, dishwasher, it doesn't matter. Being present and ask the right question, and always hire the people the way you would never be able to fire them. Once you do that, you're gonna have at least more chance to get the right person to the right station. But I learned this back in a time, and I'm not saying I'm against union and anything, but local 6 was very tough for me to deal with back in a time when I worked for Gordon Ramsay. And one rule was for me always, when I hired somebody, you will never be able to fire a person like this. You know, they work with you.
They're there for life.
So, which is fine, you know, not a thing, but you know, you still need to go through the hiring process correctly, that you know, is this the right person for the job? And I think we are in a day and age now that it's so difficult to find staff, and we are scared almost that we don't have enough staff for the busy season. I get all that, but that's our job to really find.
You make a good point, though. You have to hire right to begin with. You hire right. They say hire well, fire better.
Yeah, but again, remember, they work for you. You are the restaurant owner,
Right.
and you set the tone, and it's your vision. So I think there's no harm of letting them know what the actual goal is. You know, people want to be managed in a lot of ways. If you don't have any guidelines to bring them to the next level, what are you going to do? They all fall through the cracks. They can be talented or not talented, but they will not be to your fullest potential. You're welcome.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we had our meetings on a weekly basis. We still do this today. I have a weekly call with my team about the weekly financials. I have a call about the monthly financials. There's a lot of things I don't know, but they know. There's a lot of things I know they don't know. But it's about communication on a daily basis. And when you know your menu and your revenues and your cost in general, to take those numbers and put it in real time, which means this is the real food. I'm actually portioning up the beef tenderloin, for example. And it's actually the real weight what we actually calculated as well, because that's another issue. People calculating here, and then the real time is a prep cook downstairs you don't supervise, for example, and that person cuts actually 50 grams more out of it. So that you know all that in combination with the communication with your partners, it's a learning process. It's not like I didn't get this like tomorrow. You know, it's something you have to be open as well and willing to discuss openly with your partners and friends or industry leaders that you learn on a daily basis, because that's what it comes down to, you know.
You had a question?
I'm happy to be here. Oh, perfect. With a K or with a C? Okay.
someone go to an Italian place or
Yeah.
How do you think about that when you're building today?
That's a very good question. Yeah, obviously, to begin with the brand, I wanted to express myself a little bit as well with my background when I opened this restaurant. Not necessarily it's all Markus Glocker, but to have a brand identity with the Koloman and that kind of food. You know, I mean, as much as Austrian going to Austrian restaurants, as much as Japanese go to Japanese restaurants. I think that aspect in New York is so great because, you know, we have so many multi-culti facets around us that, you know, we have so many restaurants, so many cultures, that there is that part that you actually are able to seat that many people in your restaurant because there's just that many people and they're all from different cultures. So for me, it was very important that I have that cultural aspect to it, but as well with the dishes, I modified them quite drastically in a lot of ways to make them identifiable and a little bit more easy for the market as well, that people are not going to be, what the hell is this? You know, I ordered a salmon en croûte. Yes, it still has pastry on it. Doesn't look exactly like a classic one, but it's not so drastically different that they're going to send it back and then want to have something else. So to find that middle ground, I think that's the exercise, you know. And I tell you, this menu took me probably 5 years to build in my head, and then I actually had the kitchen to execute it, and then I changed everything again. But you know, you're just constantly thinking about what's your favorite dishes in your culture, what's your favorite dish on a daily basis, how can you package this dish to have the same sensation for the guest, but actually can charge more money. You know, you can elevate this experience. And I always say this, and schnitzel is one of the Austrians' staple dish. It's like making a hamburger here, I guess. Do I really want to know for the best schnitzel in America? No. It's like, it's a comfort food. It's something we're going to do on a daily basis. But I do think that I'm doing a good job with that dish. And it's like, you know, it's my mom's potato salad. It's the same recipe we used in Vienna. And there's a certain connection you have emotionally to the dish that relates to the guest. And I think that's where people are coming from. And they're coming for this dish, which is, I had the conversation with Drew when we opened Batard. I didn't want to do the dish. He said, we're going to do the dish. Okay, let's do it. The first night was 50% of the main courses was schnitzel.
That's what they got.
And, you know, that's another experience of partners to know what people like to eat. And, you know, charge $50 for foie gras, you know, people are going to say, charge $25 for a burger, pizza, pasta. Nobody's going to say anything. Most of the times they're going to say, oh, it's delicious, it's comforting. But, you know, a foie gras costs you on the food cost side, probably with $50, at least 50%. And these dishes, you are making money and it's satisfying, and people have no questions about it because they just love it. It's just like those kinds of dishes, you know.
Hope that time for another question or two. We're wrapping up. Is that a question, Corey?
I mean, if you're in a stage of a burnout, stop. Like completely, do not worry about like how you're going to make your boss feel or your coworkers, or if you, and I think once you're at that stage, you know exactly. I mean, I was verge of burning out at that time, and I was quite young as well. Like I went after service running on Western Highway. You know, it was 2008 when the financial crisis was. You know, I had a visa. I thought my visa is gonna go away as well, so I had to go back. So all these things coming in your head, you burn out. Just say stop, done. Take a break, refocus, and there's not really any other things you can do. If you keep going, it's going to be on a daily basis worse and worse and worse. But again, when you start the next project after an experience like this, just make sure the expectations are right with ever who you work with or work for, that the expectations are correct. And, you know, the expectations when I hire somebody as well, and they're going to say, you're going to work 8 hours a day, and then I'm going to make this person work 16 hours a day. What do you think is going to happen? So I think we have to be honest about it as well, to set up a schedule, for example, that it's real in real time, that people can produce and be creative and, you know, not burn out.
Final question, Alan? Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
I don't.
Sounds like a
You know, like
question.
I have a French Austrian restaurant, I have soy sauce on the menu, but not in writing. I don't have soy sauce mentioned on the menu. That's the way you think about it. You know, I could call the salmon en croûte Cromancini, for example. There's an Italian version,
Mhm.
but I use those keywords to make this restaurant appear in a different way, but as well having techniques which are not necessarily Austrian or flavors. They're combined with that. So I think you can do anything in the kitchen. You can do anything and everything in the kitchen as long as you're going to package it correctly, and that the packaging and the writing on the menu reflects the concept of the restaurant as well, and style of service, obviously. But I think there's no limits, to be honest. They have to be clever and creative how to hide them, but the flavor is there, you know. I mean, the best umami is soy sauce for me. I still use the same soy sauce I bought at Charlie Trotter's when I was there. I get it delivered here from the Skiji market. I buy this twice every 6 months. Huge delivery. I think Louis Benedin and I are the only ones who use this. It's delicious, but I use this for like meats to marinate, to, you know, triple sear, that kind of thing. But I have no problem to call it French, because the French technique is behind it and the flavor is there. You know, nobody's going to be upset about good taste.
Good point. Alan?
So being responsible for everything that comes out of the kitchen and everybody's experience, can you walk us through your day, walk into the restaurant? How do you navigate your day so that you know that everybody is on board out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start in the morning. I mean, like, you know, I bike to work in the morning. I live in Harlem. I live on 113th Street. I bike through the park, buy myself a coffee, do my emails. I have quite a few emails now these days because you have all the outlets, and obviously you want to see all the department heads, what they're doing as well on a regular basis. So you're going to check all those emails. And then I just, my first thing when I come to Koloman is really, I go down to the kitchen. I'm going to say hello to everybody. I have my chef de cuisine, Sway Quinto, who is with me for quite a while. And the funny thing is we immediately start about food. We talk about food, what can we do? Is there anything from last night? We have to change, you know, we have the reports from last night as well. We're going to walk through it. And then most of the time I have a couple of dishes to taste. I'm going to take care of a couple of HI issues if there are. And then I'm going to be up for lunch service, and I'm going to be in the pass. I'm going to be there. I'm not doing the service myself. I have a sous chef, but, you know, I see the food, what's going out there, and I definitely voice my concern if there's anything going out wrong. Then we have a management meeting in the afternoon with front of the house, with financial meetings as well. And then I set up for dinner service, portioning, and, you know, foie gras or octopus or fish or that kind of thing. Most of the time I do myself, not just because I have to. It's just like I love to be connected. It's something I appreciate just before service, and I know exactly how many portions of beef I have, how many portions of fish I have. So that's sort of a nice exercise for me. And then I start service. Every VIP I mostly cook myself. I'm gonna be in the pass because I have the sommeliers where I know when Rick is coming in, he's sitting on 61. I know exactly what he likes. And, you know, I send an extra dish, make them happy. And that's sort of my part. And I let my sous chefs know who these people are as well. And when I'm not there, the bigger chance is that when Rick comes in and I'm not there, that they know who Rick is. And they're going to treat him the same way. So it's, you know, I'm not cooking everything myself, but this is sort of the day around 9:30. I'm going to be back on my bike and go home. That's it. I could work out though in the morning, but I have to start that day.
Last question, Mr. Smilo. Things
have changed. It's no longer an ad in New York Magazine. It's no longer, you know, Danny Meyer has all his customers, you know, right? Because they got guys. So
yeah, we're coming with the New York Times into the restaurant, and, you know, yeah, it's,
what are the levers you can pull or the tools in the toolbox?
For me, I mean, I think for Koloman specifically for this restaurant, I think the story was very important, and I think the story was my tool to place this restaurant in a way that this restaurant doesn't exist theoretically in New York City. I know there's a restaurant called Walsee, which is very similar in the Austrian front, but they're full-on Austrian restaurant. But you know, that's why I have you know, co-workers like Sophie helping me out with branding, and you know, it could be easily an old stuffy restaurant as well. but the way we design it and the way the restaurant looks and appears. And then what comes in place is the online appearance for Instagram, for example. You know, it's not necessarily my thing I would like to do all the time, but I have to as well. It's a big part of the whole experience. So, for example, we hired a branding agency. The branding agency is still doing all the photographs for Instagram on the grid, but the same person, the same style, and the same lighting. And the wording is always done by Sophie. We have a schedule where we post and how we post and what we post. And the stories is the only thing which is different on the style. So I didn't know that. You know, I cook great food and try to make this a profitable business, but then other aspects and other talents come in to shape this vision and shape the online vision as well of the restaurant. And it has to be real, it has to be comparison as well with the actual products and what's on social media. So to position the Koloman restaurant like this, to make a restaurant which is inspired by 1890 to 1923, to make that cool and fun and now was the exercise. And I think we did a good job there, because the music, for example, in the restaurant is, you know, it's sometimes it's house, it's sometimes it's for lunch, it's French. It's cool. You can go in there for a drink and have fun with friends, and you can have a serious dinner as well. So that part was our biggest challenge with the branding, number one. But I think we found the niche how to pull it off. The location speaks for itself. I mean, you know, we looked at so many locations, but the company EHV, which is behind us, they had a location like this before, and when we looked to get at this location with the business plan in my hand, I knew high ceilings. It's sort of an old school look, and you know, rough around the edges is not always bad. Rough around the edges for a restaurant where not everything is completely polished is something a good thing, and I think this was very good for Koloman as well. And my biggest thing was that I went to the space when I was first coming to the US. I went there when April Bloomfield was still there. And there was most of the time an industry hangout after service. All the cooks went there. It was sort of like Blue Ribbon back in the time. We all went there and we talked about food and we had a beer. And that memory for me was the reason why I said this is the place. And I do think a lot of guests that came back to the space eating Koloman's food now, they had a good memory as well from Breslin. And you know, goodwill attached to a space is a big deal too.
That's a wrap, folks. Chef Markus
Thank you
Glocker.
very much. And I hope I see you all at